Welcome back. Now, our next guest went from fierce rivals to the best of friends, using their unique style and insight to help make them the world's #1 rugby podcast.
And to look ahead to this year's Six Nations, we're joined by rugby greats Jim Hamilton and Andy Goode. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. And
Morning,
Andy,
guys.
I believe you were in my part of the world just last weekend. You were in Limerick at the Munster match. Were you delighted to be there?
I was actually, and there was a few sore heads knocking around on the Sunday morning because obviously everyone came out of the lockdown on the Saturday. But it was great to be over in Limerick, tasting a proper pint of Guinness, and just the love and appreciation for our podcast. I was amazed, really taken aback at how much people enjoy it. So thank you to everyone from Limerick.
I believe you got a pint of Guinness, but you were struggling to get a bite to eat.
Yeah, the chicken hut wouldn't open for him or something.
It wasn't quite. It wasn't too easy for you.
No, it wasn't. I put a bit of blackcurrant in the Guinness as well, which annoys people in Ireland. So, and a couple of packets of crisps, and that was about it.
You do what? You're trying to promote a podcast in Ireland here. You can't
you
be
are.
saying
Some
that.
podcast has got to come back with something about that. Oh, Andy, no.
Listen, it was a great match, great performance by Munster as well, and you got to be pitch side for it as well. Jim, listen, the Six Nations starts next weekend. Scotland against England. I mean, do you think that Scotland could make it 2 in a row against the English?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I'll tell you what's going to be good about this year's Six Nations, without stating the obvious. We've got fans back, haven't we? So it obviously changes a number of things in terms of the dynamics and the energy around the Six Nations. But, Tommy, in answer to your question, absolutely. The Calcutta Cup first up. Next weekend, Scotland, England. Obviously, anyone who watched the Six Nations last year would have seen that we absolutely smashed the English at Twickenham. And arguably, if it wasn't for the Irish, we would have won the Six Nations. So, no, we're looking forward to obviously first up and fans back in stadiums. It's going to be class.
Smashed the English.
That's
going to get your friends on an Irish morning television show, I'll tell you that much.
It's definitely got it back from putting the blackcurrant into the Guinness anyway.
Well, yeah, there we go. These are the issues. Andy, of course, we're seeing Eddie Jones bring in some new faces. What do you make of the current squad?
Yeah, it's really exciting, actually. As an English fan, which I am now, and obviously a pundit, we've sort of bemoaned the selections at times because he's just picked on reputation as opposed to form. Now, if you look at this squad, there's absolutely no one in that squad that's not on great form in the Premiership. Obviously Marcus Smith's the big news at 10. We can't wait to see how he develops over the Six Nations. His match up first against Finn Russell, who's a magician within himself, is going to be phenomenal. The centre issues for us are something that's always out there. Manu Tuolangi's out injured. Obviously, Owen Farrell, we know he's missing the whole of the Six Nations now as well. So the likes of Henry Slade has really got to step up. Perhaps Joe Marchant in the centres as well. But there's some really exciting selections, and I can't fault Eddie Jones for once with that, because normally we can find holes in his selection and want people to be picked that are on form in the Premiership but not picked in international level.
Can I ask you, Andy, are you excited to see Finn Russell up against Marcus Smith? There's been a real change in the style of rugby that I've seen this season, particularly in the likes of the Champions Cup and in the November internationals. And the two of them guys, two mavericks, love to throw the ball about. The fact that supporters are going to be there, those two guys will get them up off their seats.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at the brand of rugby that Leinster are playing, you look at the brand of rugby that Ireland played to beat New Zealand as well. There's been a seismic shift. You go back to the fact that there was no fans in stadiums last year, and England played a massive kicking game, and it was boring to watch. So thank goodness there was no fans in there, because they'd have all walked out. But now, Harlequins won the Premiership in England, playing a distinct brand of rugby, which is more attack-minded, with Marcus Smith at the helm, and hopefully that leads into an England performance. And watching Finn Russell come against Marcus Smith and Murrayfield, hopefully it's a dry day and we can see them all produce their box of tricks.
Jim, I'm just wondering what you make of what Kieran Crowley said. He, of course, is the coach, the Italian coach, and he said that he would welcome a relegation promotion situation happening with the Six Nations, whereby a team would be relegated and someone like Georgia probably would be moved up from the Rugby European Championship. What do you make of that?
Would Scotland be worried?
I did see the... Oh, my word, Tommy. Mate, we've passed that now. The foundation...
Tommy!
All this talk about Italy, but I tell you what...
contenders. Tommy, that's old school, mate. Grand Slam decider the last weekend.
Stirring.
Look, Italy are always up against it, aren't they? They've finished bottom for the last few seasons. They've got one of their team doing really well in the URC. Kieran Crowley the former Benetton coach who's now running the show with Italy. It's a tough one, isn't it? Because there's talk of this promotion relegation. Does it make the competition more exciting? I don't really know, because we're talking about Italy probably being relegated and then a Georgia and Romania coming up who would struggle to compete anyway, with all due respect. You know, Scotland have now got to the point where they're not fighting for the bottom place. We are fighting for, the kind of top 3 places, and Italy are left behind. I think what Kieran Crowley's saying is that he's confident enough that Italy, if there was a playoff decider, say between the winners of the Tier 2 Six Nations with a Georgia or Romania, that Italy would beat them. Or if Italy dropped down into that Tier 2 and a Romania or Georgia came up, that they'd come straight back down and Italy would go straight back up. I actually think personally, for the growth of rugby, it's probably a good thing to see happen. I don't think it will happen anytime soon, but Italy have got a lot of work. They've been left behind. There's talk of them trying to bring in, players that qualify. Guys like Alex Zozowski, who's at Saracens and was capped by England. So they're trying to do things there. They're good people in Italy. They're a fantastic rugby nation. But in terms of where teams like Scotland and obviously everyone else are now in the Six Nations, they've been left well behind.
Yeah, absolutely have. Listen, can I just chat to you about the Rugby Pod? I mean, to think that it is the biggest rugby podcast in the world is incredible. Congratulations, lads, because there's a lot of rugby podcasts out there. But you're taking it to Ireland. You're going to be in Dublin towards the end of the Six Nations as well. I mean, what can people expect when the Rugby Pod comes to town, apart from blackcurrant and Guinness?
Well, that's absolutely in my pint. There will be no blackcurrant. It will be straight. It will be straight laced as a pint of Guinness gets. But I think, firstly, humbly, Tommy, we started the Rugby Pod not for any financial gain, not for any other reason, but to have a little bit of fun. And I think what the fans have seen is an authenticity around that. It's organically grown. We've not tried to push it out on social media, and we've just let it do what it does, and it's gone really well, humbly. And part of that is we've branched out into live shows. We've done them when the Lions were down in New Zealand. We've done them around the Six Nations, and Ireland seems to be our second home. You look at the demographic. When the producers look at the algorithms and stuff, we've got a big following across Ireland.
Absolutely.
So we're back in Ireland for 3 shows, so we can't wait.
I love this that you're saying humbly. There's nothing humble when Andy Goode is in a podcast. Listen, guys, thank you so much. I mentioned there, so it is the 2nd of February in Café and Sen, and the 9th of March on D2 Harcourt Street in Dublin. Listen, guys, thanks so much for coming on, talk to us, and best of luck in the first weekend.
Thanks, Tommy. Thanks for having us on, everyone.